Hello everyone, Brian here, and today I wanted to give you guys my predictions of IEM Oakland. So, we're still in the preseason, and Season 7 won't start until December. However, IEM Oakland is really the precursor into the Season 7 competitive League of Legends. And I say this because even though this tournament's going to be played on not Season 7 patches, whoever wins IEM Oakland guarantees their spot in the IEM World Championship, which that will be played in Season 7, about midway through the spring split probably. That's when it usually takes place. So today I wanted to kind of give you guys my predictions of who I think is going to win IEM Oakland. So if you didn't know, IEM Oakland is going to be played on the 19th and 20th of November. There will be 6 teams competing. The first 2 teams will have a bye and won't play in the first round, and they will be Team Solo Mid from North America and the Flash Wolves from Taiwan. The other 4 teams who will be competing in the first stage are Ints from Brazil, Unicorns of Love from Europe, Chiefs from the Oceanic Pro League, and Longzhu from Korea. So, just so everyone knows, every game is a series that's best out of 3 until the finals, which is best out of 5. Um, so, like I said too, as well, it's going to be on patch 6.21, so no plants, no assassin changes. So yeah, we're going to start off on the top side of the bracket, which will be Ints versus Unicorns of Love. So if you don't watch a lot of the wildcard regions, the last time you probably saw Ints was at the World Championships. They did place last in their group at the World Championships. However, they did put up some good games, mostly off the back of their superstar jungler Revolta. And the one big thing about Ints is that they actually managed to beat EDG, which nobody saw coming. So Ints does look pretty decent. They did put up some decent games, even though they only managed to pick up 1 game and finish last. Consequently, the team that they're going to be playing actually didn't make it to Worlds. But the last time we saw Unicorns of Love was they finished 4th in the EU LCS. And then they went to the Gauntlet to try to make it to Worlds, and they actually looked a lot better than they did, even when they even placed 4th in EU LCS. Their Gauntlet was a lot better for them. Most people thought that the Gauntlet Finals was going to be Fnatic versus Splyce, and most people thought Splyce was going to take it. Unicorns of Love surprised many people when they managed to 3-0 Giants in the first round, 3-0 Fnatic in the second round, and actually take Splyce to a close 5-game series. Unicorns of Love were only 1 game away from actually making it to Worlds instead of Splyce, and they looked really good. They had really good macro play that series, which is kind of surprising because most people, when they think of Unicorns of Love, think of like the Chaos style and how they coined the Chaos style. So yeah, they actually looked pretty good. So let's go into the matchup, right? I do think that Ints has an advantage in the jungle. I think Revolta is Int's best player, and I think that Move, the Unicorns of Love jungler, is actually Unicorns of Love one of their worser players. So if Ints is actually going to do well, look at to be off the back of Revolta. He's going to have to out jungle Move, which I actually think he can do, and he's going to have to use that advantage to his other lanes. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that's kind of where Ints' advantage ends. I think Vizicachi is a great top laner. He's been a solid rock for since he started, really, with the Unicorns of Love. He's always had his name thrown around as one of like the top 3 EU top laners, maybe top 2, top 1, depending on the time. And then if you look at their mid laner, Unicorns of Love has a superstar young mid laner, Exile, who's only 19, so he's actually only going to get better. Exile's name was thrown around as one of the best EU mid laners for a while. You know, he got some votes in the MVP candidate, although he's beat out by Knight. But he's generally looked really good. Hill is saying Unicorns of Love support has always been playing pretty well, kind of like with Vizicachi, always been that rock in the bottom lane. He's been doing well, never really looked bad. Unfortunately, Unicorns of Love AD carry Veritas has never been one of the top AD carriers in Europe. But the thing that stinks for Ints is their bot lane isn't too good either. Talkers and Jokester are not the greatest. To be fair, at Worlds you did see them go against some pretty high-level bot lanes like Forgiven and Vander and EDG's bot lane with Deft. So it might be kind of hard to compare them to them, like these superstar bot laners. However, it did look like the Ints' bot lane just could not keep up at a world stage. Unicorns of Love almost made it to Worlds, so you can kind of debate whether you would, say that their bot laners would hold it to a world stage, but I don't think that their bot lane would be good enough for them to really take advantage of the Unicorn's weakness in the AD carry. So with all that being said, I really think that the Unicorns of Love will take this series probably 2-0. It's hard to like put a definitive answer on like how many games each team will win because, like I said, I could see Revolta doing well, picking up a game like they did against EDG, where maybe he camps the top lane or the bot lane, and gets their laners really fed. But if I were to had to put my money down, I would say 2-0 for Unicorns of Love. So we're gonna keep with the top side of the bracket since we just talked about the first game on the top side of the bracket. And now whoever wins between Unicorns of Love and Ints will play against TSM. So talk with TSM for a bit. TSM is coming off Worlds, where for a while, like TSM looks like a really strong team, right? There was no really weak link at TSM. You could argue at Worlds that their bot lane didn't perform pretty, decent, but they're going up against like they were in a really hard group, right? There's a lot of competition in Group D, and I really think that TSM is still a pretty strong team. You look at Bjergsen. Bjergsen's a superstar. There's no other way to put it. That guy's just a monster. He just seems to always be getting better and better, and it's you just how can he? You never know, but he keeps improving. Svenskeren and Hanser both looked really good at Worlds. And the biggest caveat with TSM coming into this tournament is that Wild Turtle is going to be playing as their AD carry instead of Doublelift. So if you didn't know, Doublelift's going to be taking a break for the spring split, and TSM's going to get a new AD carry. The AD carry is not Wild Turtle, but they haven't got the new AD carry yet, so Wild Turtle's going to be stepping in. So the big caveat with it, they haven't had a lot of time to practice with Turtle, and we don't really know how Turtle and Biofrost are going to play together. But I addressed this in another video as well. I think Wild Turtle's actually going to fit in like a glove. I don't think he's going to change up their synergy as well. Wild Turtle's already been to another team, Immortals, did pretty well there and came back, so you can see that he can kind of change his play style a little bit. He was still pretty aggressive, but he can fit into other play styles, is what I'm saying. He can fit into other team dynamic, and I think he's going to do that again with TSM, especially with all the history he has with TSM. Played with Bjergsen before, knows like Parth, he knows Reggie, so he fits right in. Everybody loves Turtle. He's really easy to get along with. So I think that TSM's actually going to still do well with Wild Turtle. I think he's going to fit in well. And even if TSM's bot lane is going to be weak at this tournament, which is hard to predict, right? Because you don't know how well he will fit in, but this is all predictions. But even if they didn't play well, Unicorns and even Ints, if they were to somehow win it, don't have the bottom lane to exploit this weakness, right? There is no they don't have some crazy laners that will kill Turtle and Biofrost if they somehow don't play up to the standards I think they will. So even if you have like the caveat of like maybe they don't do well, I still don't think Unicorns of Love bot lane can take advantage of that because I just don't think they're good enough. So no, I already talked about Unicorns of Love, so let's just I'll just talk about the way that I think this game will go. Right? I think that TSM will win 2-1. I think that the advantage that Unicorns of Love has is they've been 5 players for longer. They looked really good in the Gauntlet, and I think that they're going to keep with that level of play, really. But the thing is, I just think that TSM is too good. Yeah, they lost their AD carry, but I think Wild Turtle's going to fit in pretty well, and I don't think their level of play is going to dip that much. I think the TSM really didn't get to showcase how good they can play at Worlds, and I think they will here. Even though Exile is a new up-and-coming mid laner, I don't see him doing anything crazy to Bjergsen. Same with top lane. I think that Hanser's just as good as Vizichachi. I think it's a pretty even matchup. And I think that Svenskeren, which is the biggest thing here, is just going to run the jungle over move. And I think Svenskeren's really going to shine in this game. Even if TSM's bot lane doesn't do well, Svenskeren I think will just be a monster and out jungle move. And I just don't see how Unicorns of Love will be able to deal with that unless move maybe camps bottom lane and Turtle and Biofrost don't perform to their standards. It's kind of hard for me to say that Unicorns of Love will or won't get a win. I think they will if they play to the way that they did at the Gauntlet. But at the end of the day, I think TSM's just going to be too much. So now let's look at the bottom side of the bracket. The first game is going to be between Longzhu and Chiefs. Now, Chiefs is one of the most hyped teams coming out of the Oceanic region, but they did qualify in second place through the IEM's qualification bracket to get here. So, not bracket, the tournament. So, if you didn't know, IEM brought together like 4 wild cards, and they had to compete against each other to qualify for IEM Oakland. That's how Ints got there. They got in first place. They only dropped 1 game, which was to Chiefs, fair enough. But Chiefs were the team that qualified second, but they qualified through the loser bracket. So coming into this, they are probably the weakest team. And now, the last time we saw Longzhu was at the Kespa Cup where they played against Jin Air. They lost 2-1, and Frozen, their mid laner, looks like a monster, but the team just doesn't seem to be cohesion, right? Lung's 80 carry it doesn't seem to be living up to the hype from the Samsung days, and the team just doesn't really seem to be clicking the way you think that this Korean team should. But the caveat with this is we're seeing Longzhu, and they're not living up to expectations. And by the way, before I go any further, I'm kind of basing this off of Longzhu, who they're bringing. I think they're going to field the same team they fielded at the Kespa Cup. That could change, and predictions would change along with it. But even for this game, I don't really think it would matter too much who they fielded. I'm just going off of who they played who they played with at the Kespa Cup. But no matter what, even if Longzhu they're not living up to all these expectations. They're not living up to these expectations against Korean teams, the best region in the world, the team that had 3 out of the 4 top 4 spots at Worlds this year. This is that's who Longzhu isn't living up to expectations against. So unfortunately for Chiefs, I don't really see anything that they could take advantage of, right? And I don't mean to try to have this lackluster analysis for this game, but I really don't see any way Chiefs can win. Even if Longzhu isn't a cohesive team, I think just raw talent-wise, they'll just muscle them down, and I really don't see any way for Chiefs to win this. So I'm gonna move on from this game, and we're gonna look at the next part of the bracket. So whoever wins this game between Chiefs and Longzhu will play against Flash Wolves. Now, last time we saw Flash Wolves was at Worlds, where they finished last in their group. They did go 2-4 with IEM, who were both the last 2 teams, but unfortunately, Flash Wolves lost both their games to IEM, which would put them at, the last place of groups. It didn't really matter because 3 and 4 don't matter who gets what, but for all intents and purposes, Flash Wolves got 4th. And they didn't look good at Worlds, barring one game. There's always a caveat, and it's their game against SKT. And I don't know what it is about Flash Wolves, but they always manage to seem to beat SKT. Just look at MSI. I don't know what it is. Flash Wolves didn't look good against really anybody else. They did beat Cloud9, but they didn't look convincing at that game. Their other game against Cloud9 was sloppy. They didn't look good, but they still did beat SKT. And SKT only dropped 2 games to non-Korean teams. They dropped 1 to Flash Wolves, and they dropped 1 to EDG. All their other games were against Koreans. So there is something to be said about the fact that Flash Wolves did manage to beat SKT, but you can't put one game above all their 5 other games that look terrible, right? So going into this game, I really think that Longzhu will still take it 2-1. I think Flash will they're the Korean killers for some reason. I still think that they have it in them to take a game off Longzhu, right? The jungler Karsa is really good. Just like their support Sword Like, they have some superstars on their team. And I think that they have a pretty strong jungle mid synergy. But the thing is, so does Longzhu, right? Frozen, Longzhu's mid laner, he kind of seems like he's in elo hell sometimes, especially in the Kespa Cup. But their jungler is pretty mechanically gifted as well. He just sometimes makes some rash decisions. But I think that one of Flashwell's biggest strengths is their jungle mid. Also, is a pretty big strength for Longzhu. It's really tough to predict this game, honestly. But I'm gonna have to give it to Longzhu. I think they just have more talent. Even though Longzhu's bottom lane, especially their 80 carries, and live up to their hype from the Samsung days, I still think they're going to be better than Flashwell's bottom lane because NL just... I have a lot to say about NL, but I'm just going to... He doesn't perform well unless it's like late game. I think he should be performing better. And I think that Longzhu will take it over Flashwell's, probably 2-1. But like I said, it's pretty hard to predict. But if you have to bet money, bet on the Korean team, right? So that will bring us at a culmination of the finals of Longzhu and TSM. That's who I think is going to play in the finals. Now, I'll tell my prediction at the end, but this is going to be an interesting matchup, right? I think that Longzhu has always been the team that has really mechanically gifted players. Like when they first, even though it's changed, like Frozen's in there now, not Coco and things like this. When they first announced their roster, they had a big roster, and there's just they just threw a bunch of huge names in it, and this shit looked scary for a while. We're like, this might be the team that wins Worlds. Obviously, looking at it, a year later, you can see that they're not the best, but they still have these mechanically gifted players, right? And it's worth noting that when teams have had a lot of time to practice, especially coming to IEM Oakland, sometimes mechanics can win out because teams aren't, they're not fluid. But I don't think that will happen with TSM. I think TSM will come in pretty fluid. I think that Turtle was the best AD carry they could have gotten for a couple day stint. I think that they'll play well, but it'll be a really interesting matchup, right? I definitely think Frozen is Longzhu's best player. Unfortunately for him, TSM's best player is Bjergsen, so I don't think Frozen's going to be able to carry. It's not like I don't see him solo killing Bjergsen at all. So I think it's going to be really hard for, you know, Longzhu's way to win to happen, right? I think Frozen's going to have to go off. And maybe their jungler could help him, but the thing is, I think the TSM also has a really great jungle mid synergy. The two Danes, Sven Skaren and Bjergsen. So I think that the way that Longzhu wins is through their mid jungle synergy. And the problem is, TSM is a really great mid jungle synergy. So I think that TSM and Longzhu, sorry, have similar strengths, but I think that TSM's strengths will be better, and I think that TSM's going to have better team play. Now, there's always a big thing of how will Wild Turtle play. And Wild Turtle and Biofrost, because you got to look at the bot lane as a whole. But I really think that TSM as a team is going to play more fluid. I think Wild Turtle is going to play fine. I don't see him, dying 20 times or something like that. And I don't see the way that Longzhu's bot lane has been playing since they haven't been living up to the hype. I don't see them really taking advantage of a weak bottom lane. And I think that's the greatest thing with TSM at this tournament is I don't think any bottom lanes can take advantage of the fact that they don't have Doublelift there, that they have a weakness in the bottom lane. No bottom lane in this tournament really stands out to me, and I think that's the greatest thing for TSM coming in. So if I had to predict a series, like a number, I would probably say 3-1 TSM. That's what I'm guessing. But it's really hard to predict because, like I said, because you never know, Turtle could come in and him and Biofrost maybe don't mend it all, and one person's doing this, the other person's doing that. I don't see that happening, but it's always a caveat, right? And maybe Fury will live up to his hype and just go fucking bananas. But this is what I think is going to happen based off their recent performances, right? And also another thing is too, it's hard to bet against Koreans. I did, but just look back when KT Bullets weren't looking that good in Korea and then beat Gambit and Fnatic to win the IEM. I don't think that'll happen here. I think TSM, based on the way they looked, pretty much since the summer split, going into playoffs, going into finals, going into World, even at Worlds, I think TSM still looks good. And I think they will win 3-1. But it'll be interesting to see. And I want to hear what you guys had to predict, because there's not much to go off of for most of these teams. But this is kind of a big tournament. I know it doesn't seem that big because we're not on Season 7, but like I said, IEM World Championship spot is nothing to laugh at. So yeah, this is what I think. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Leave it in the comments, and if you like the video, leave a comment, like. I really appreciate it, and subscribe if you want to hear stuff like this. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.